everyone, to this new episode of Inside.net. I have with me my co-host, Rodney Littles. Hi, Rodney.
Hi.
And I also have with me my great friend, Mårten Rånge. And he
Hello
will
there.
be Hi, Mårten. And he will be discussing with us the trauma-free incident reporting process. Did I say that right, Mårten?
I would skip the word reporting, but otherwise,
Reporting,
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
Trauma-free incident.
Yeah.
Okay.
Management.
Oh,
Could
so
you-
so incident management, yeah.
Management. Okay, got
Okay.
it. Could you kind of discuss what that means? Like what, in case for the viewers who don't know, like what is trauma-free incident management?
Well, yes. So, as a developer, right? If you have been working with developer a couple of years and you shipped working with code that's running in production, right? Things happens, and sometimes when things happens, bad things happen. Sometimes good things, like you get a trip to Hawaii, right? But sometimes bad things happens, and those bad things. I sometimes talk about this, and you have to interrupt me if I start talking too much. Normally, when you're working in a project, you working with Jira tickets, you're working things like kind of like in a pace, right?
Yeah.
Then something happens, right? And I see that kind of like the exception handling. If you imagine you have a try-catch thing and you're having the normal business processes, but something happens that requires your urgent attention.
Yeah.
And then you fall into your exception handling routine,
Right.
where you need to deal with this problem. That's what you feel about your management, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you're done with that incident, then you go back to the normal business processes.
Right.
So, for example, if you have a web page, right, one thing that could be an incident is no customer can no longer log in, right? So all your customers, they login fail, and you think if you have a service, right, you can't live with that for too long, because that would customer would lose customers, and none of them would come back after a week.
Right.
Without doing. So you feel we need to address this really soon, right?
Okay. So I like the way that you describe it, right? You describe the application life cycle given the developer life cycle with a try-catch block, right? Like, hey, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden, an exceptional case happens, and we need to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So my question, before we get deeper into what trauma-free incident management looks like, can you give a little bit of background on yourself? Is this something that you've always worked with? Is this something that's new? Or is it just a new passion?
I wouldn't say it's a passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instance seldomly feels like you don't really want that to happen, but
Yes.
sure. But you might say I have a passion to tell people about trauma-free incident management, which I think is really important, because to give you some background, right? I've been working for quite a few years, and when you're working quite a few years, you run into incidents.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some really bad incidents, which I actually felt kind of shortened my life a little bit, probably.
Ooh.
It was so stressful. It was so bad. So I felt this cannot be good for my health long term. It has to have some bad implications on me. So, and then I experienced some lesser incidents and so on and so forth, right? But I kind of have the idea, right, that this is the way incident has to be. They always have to suck enormously. But then I had the opportunity to work at another company called Schibsted, which is a big media company here in Norway. It's not big compared to the US standard, but they own most of the major newspapers in Scandinavia. They own most of the major marketplaces. So it's a big company.
Okay.
And there I was involved and was taught a process on how to deal with incidents. I mean, how to deal with management is a different process, by the way, but how to deal with incidents. And after that thing, it really changed for me working with incidents. Instead of being this enormously stressful experience, it's now manageable to me. Yeah. And I think this is so important for other developers to. That's why I want to talk about it, because even though the word process makes developer run away from you very, very quickly, this process, I think, can really make you have a really bad experience to maybe even having a slightly good experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So I can tell you, I have been that developer that has checked in code and broken the entire world. So when you talk about the stress of those exceptional cases, when you're potentially losing customers, losing business, you're potentially paying people wrong amounts and millions of dollars may be missing. Like those are stressful moments, right? So what it sounds like,
Definitely.
you are going to enlighten us on a way that these things don't have to be horrible, stressful moments, and maybe they can be less stressful or even stress-free if we put a good process in place.
Right.
I didn't call this stress-free, right? Because of that reason. An incident, I think it will always be stress.
Fair
somehow,
enough.
right?
Yeah.
But what I want to get out of is the trauma, the thing that hurt you. And instead, you might have stress, you might experience something, but it might not hurt you. It might even strengthen you if you're lucky.
Okay.
Makes sense?
That's a great distinction. Yeah.
So I like that distinction that you made about it being reducing the trauma. How do you know that you're experiencing trauma? Is it like a physical thing? Is it a psychological thing?
Yeah. So when I had really bad incidents, right? I had some bad incidents a few years ago. And it's like you feel an enormous stress. You feel a weight on your shoulder that you have to deal with this thing. And you feel maybe even alone. And you can't sleep. Your stomach, for my case, my stomach stops working. And I might even get into brain freezes, because if you hit the stress level that is too high, you become passive.
Yeah.
Because you should act, but it's just too much. It's like you read about this air crash,
almost like shock,
where people are in the shock, like you say, in the shock environment. And you read about, but why did they become passive? Why didn't they act and save their life? And that's because, and now when I experience that kind of thing, I can understand that you get to this point, it's just too much for you. So you become passive when you actually need to act.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're even talking about like human developer health, as well as understanding that we need to be in a good mind space in order to be able to solve the problem that we're facing. We can't just run around with like chickens with our heads cut off. That idiom probably doesn't, but like we actually have to stop, take a breath, and experience the problem to be able to solve the problem. And we need to be able to do that without causing ourselves harm. So that's a very important thing that we actually don't talk about a lot in our industry, right? Like like you said, is we think of it as this is the norm. This is how it's supposed to happen. What you're telling me is, Rodney, it doesn't have to happen that way. That's just the way you're currently managing these incidents.
Yeah. Everybody has a process to deal with incidents. But if you don't think about it, your process most likely is bad.
Yes.
For you. Yeah. And it doesn't resolve the issue quickly enough. So I even think this trauma-free management process kind of thinking is also beneficial, because you might resolve your incident quicker. You might have better communication with the stakeholders. So it's not just saving the developer's skin here. It's actually that it's also irrational to sort of burn your developers out, but also not solving the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win, I think. But it sounds magical now, but also what I can, but it's not really magical.
So you go, Ronnie.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, so what exactly does this process look like? Like, does it involve code? Does it involve like a regimen? Like, what does it look like?
I would say,
if you need to share your screen as well, we can also do that.
Maybe later.
Okay.
I don't think I need currently, but it gives a framework of how you can deal with the problem. I'm going to get more specific, right? But it gives a framework on how you can attack any problem and delegate work and make sure you're working on the right thing. So if I'm going to start this presentation, like, for example, just to give a little bit more background. So at Schibsted, what happened was it shipped it. I was introduced to big data. I mean, if you compare it to Facebook, it's not big data. But, for us, it was big data. We received like 5 terabytes of JSON documents per day. And we wrote 15 terabytes of JSON documents. We had a 1 petabyte data lake that we were managing. And it was also a lot of personal data, which means there is GDPR, which is kind of serious stuff to take in consideration, right? So, and I joined that company, and after a year, I joined that company as kind of not knowing what I was doing, but I want to learn about big data. But after a year, more or less all the senior developers I was working with had, in some capacity, quit. And kind of, I was the oldest guy on the team now, and people looked to me for these incidents that were happening. Yeah. And a lot of incidents were happening here because we were a very central product, receiving data from all Schibsted assets, all newspapers, all marketplaces were sending data to us. So if we screwed up, everybody noticed it. Not the customer, though, that's good, but all the people that needed data noticed it.
Right.
And also, if someone else screwed up, we might need to be part of the process, because if someone sent us data they were not supposed to send us, and we need to scrubbing of data, we needed to be inside that process because we received that data at some point. Right. So I was in a huge amount of incidents during that time. And that is kind of where I really learned this process, backwards and forward, and so on. So this process at Schibsted, I think, was more or less, Schibsted had the idea of becoming this new Facebook, new Google in Norway. And they hired a lot of talented individuals from Google and from Facebook and from Microsoft and all over the place to build this new thing. I kind of came in after the party, where the party was kind of done, and we're probably not going to be new Facebook, and we're kind of winding down this operation a little bit more. So here come me, kind of the cleaner, and maybe other people left because they didn't really see the future anymore. But so I joined there instead. But because of this, they had put this process into place, which I think is probably stolen from Facebook or someone else, or maybe it's a combination of processes, right? Mm-hmm. But that's even better if you take a proven process and sort of adapt it to your environment than just trying to be smart and come up with the real thing yourself. So it was called incident management at Schibsted. And for me to start being more concrete, because now I've just been blah, 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 is at the center of this thing here, I would say, is what is called a live incident document, which is a Google Doc. Or it doesn't have to be a Google Doc, but it has to have the properties of a Google Doc.
Right. In that shareable across a team.
Yes. It is live, easy to share, easy to work with. Everybody can access it, right? Yep. And Google Doc is a good tool for that. Yep. If you can find another tool, that's fine. It doesn't need to be. The purpose of this lid is a very important thing, because what happens if you have an incident and maybe you kick off a Slack channel, right? And you start working with the incident. Then your manager joins the channel. And your manager says, I need to know what's going on. Explain it to me. And then you explain it to your manager. Right. And then your manager join it and say, I need to know what's going on. Explain it to me. And then the side manager of that manager says, I'm not getting data anymore here. Can someone explain what the heck is going on here?
It's too much.
Right.
And
it's
you
too much.
The same thing over again, but you're not working the problem.
Exactly. Yep.
Too much back and forth.
Yes. So what you instead want to do here is you try to create this point, this live incident document that describes to the stakeholders what's going on.
Yep.
Because they need to know. It's not unreasonable thing to ask to know what's going on, right?
Right.
But the team needs to focus.
Right.
So this live incident document then contains the current status of what's going on, who's involved, what we're currently doing, what we think it is, right? Mm-hmm. But in order for that to be valuable, it needs to be kept up to date, because if it's not up to date, your manager will just come and say, but now if you have the live incident document, what happens then is when they join the Slack channel or whatever, they shouldn't even ask, because they should know this. But if they ask, you say, read the live incident document, and then come back.
Per the document.
Read it.
As I
And they
said,
shouldn't really ask. It's really, they shouldn't ask, because they should, this also come back to this process should be known to everybody in the company.
Right.
From the CEO to the, I don't know what is, whatever, right?
Right.
To the other end. Everybody knows to know. So they should even ask. But if they ask, read it.
Read it. Yeah.
So, but that thing right now gives you a little bit more calm in your team. But it has other purposes as well, right? But how do you make sure that this thing is kept up to date? And that is where you have a person kind of that has the role of maintaining that thing. And that is what is called incident commander.
Yep.
And what is an incident commander? Like, imagine a fire breaks out. The fire brigade usually have kind of like an incident commander that is in charge of this operation to make sure the fire goes out. They call the shots. They are kind of the person that makes, if you have to, often you want to get the consensus, right? But if you really disagree in things, it kind of has to be what the incident commander say, because otherwise we need to do something. But the incident commander, right, one of the important things is to maintain in this document. And you do it to make sure that the team can work. So you have to do it.
Right.
And another thing you do is you maybe talk to stakeholders, because there are stakeholders here and they are kind of interested in what's going on. So, and if it is a complicated incident, you might need to discuss with them as well, because they can have been negatively impacted here.
Right.
And they need to know what to do. And another thing which is I also see this person as is kind of like the project manager of a crazy project, which is really high tempo and really, quick, moving quick. And the purpose of what the incident management command has to do is to make sure people are focused on the purpose. And that is making sure the incident is mitigated as soon as possible. And by mitigate, I mean that we go from this criticality where we have to drop everything into a state where we can now go back to the normal. We leave the exception handler and we go back into the normal handling, the normal tickets. It might not be fully fixed. It's like the patient are bleeding out on the floor, but now we have stabilized the patient.
Right.
They're no longer bleeding, but they're not healthy. They need to get to the hospital.
Right.
But
so Mårten,
not
to interrupt you, but the way that you're describing it to me, like at first I thought it was like, okay, it's a personal process that involves a live document, but now it sounds like it's more of a collaborative approach.
Yes.
Like this person is in charge of this person goes and talks to the stakeholders. We're all communicating on this document. Like it's a whole procedure that involves everybody rather than just yourself.
Right.
Yes, because you need to involve, you need to involve people that have stakeholders. You need to respect that. You need to sort of do that, right?
Right.
But also, if it's a smaller incident, you might take on multiple roles yourself, because it just might be a single person that is suffering, and it's not a big deal anyway. So then you don't have to make this big apparatus. But the thing about this incident management process is it can scale up. Because another thing I mentioned before, sorry if I'm interrupting you, Elan.
No, you're answering my question.
Is sometimes I've been working with these incidents, really complicated incidents, and I'm being alone. And I think that is wrong. If you have, this should be shared. And this process gives you a way to share it. Because you might think, well, heck, this incident commander has a lot of responsibilities. I mean, how can you do all of these things and then sort of, actually do the work? And that is the thing, right? If it's complicated, if the incident gets messy, you cannot do all of that yourself. So then in the process, there is also a person called operational lead. Incident commander and operation lead can be the same person.
Okay.
But if it's messy, if it's, now it's really
it's ugly.
Then it's in process, it's like you ask someone else to be the operation lead. And that person focuses then and can focus on reading logs, on digging down technical, and do all of that thing. And maybe they need to pull in more people, but their work is that together with the incident commander, find the mitigation as soon as possible. But they don't need to work with the lead as much if they have they put in things right there, right? But they might not negotiate with stakeholders that much. They can sort of focus on this thing, resolving the issue as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's almost like making sure you don't have too many things on your plate, like going back and forth, trying to talk to people and discuss like, okay, this is what happened. And then also trying to solve the problem at the same time.
Well, so you don't end up solving the problem at the same time, right? So to give you he's giving a great example of how to do it right. I can tell you how I've seen it done wrong. What happens
Ooh.
is they go call the developer that has the blame on their title, and they say, hey, there's a problem, and then there's a meeting, and there's another meeting, and then there's another meeting, and all
That
these
is
developers
disgusting.
get pulled into this meeting to explain to the stakeholders what's going on
That's
instead
too
of
much.
fixing the problem
Yes.
at
That's
hand.
so gross.
Yeah, you'll burn up half a day and won't even have touched the problem.
No. This thing is right. We don't have meetings about this thing, right? If
Exactly.
you have read the lid if you need to know what's going on, right?
Read it.
Yeah. But of course, you need, as incident commander, you need to make sure that the lead is valuable, right? Okay, but but if read it, and if you have complaints, right, ask for improvements.
Right.
So I will say this, like one thing that has stuck with me, because I have interviewed Mårten on my show, A Conversation with, and one thing that stuck with me, we never really touched on this word, but I've been using it ever since, is synergy, where you had described that I think your former boss or mentor had said that if you get the right people in the room,
that's a very good point, actually,
get them talking, then like that's when the magic happens, and that's literally called synergy. It's like instead of spending all this time worrying about a problem, talking to the stakeholders and trying to make sure they're not upset or anything like that, it's like, no, it's like now it's go time, it's action. Now let's like focus on this synergy and get this resolved.
And that the person who said it to me was the CTO of Schibsted, a person I feel was very good in many, many ways. And he said, and he's been in many instances, whenever you manage to find the right people and put them in the room, things just seem to work out,
Yeah.
But
The
if I just
magic.
continue a bit here and go through roles, right? And then just to give you an example, right? Then continue. Then there's also the third role in this process, which is called the communication lead, and that is for communicating with external stakeholders. And luckily, I was never involved in that, because external stakeholder can be the police, for example, or it can be the justice system, or it can be you need to write a press release explaining why you lost all the customers' data, right? I'm not the right person to write that thing, or interact with reporters or TV crews. That's not me. I'm not that person. So then you might need someone to help you with that. But if it's really messy incident, right, that can happen. And that's why I think it's great that this process kind of shows you how to escalate that thing. Because what you don't want to do is if you have a really bad incident, like, for example, the Harrisburg incident, right, which was the nuclear power plant in the United States that blew up. It didn't really blow up, but it kind of was on the verge. And they put the engineer kind of to explain to the reporter what the heck is going on. And it was a total disaster, because this person, was a great engineer, but very bad at communicating.
Right.
So people got really anxious.
It's like, what is he saying to us? What are these words?
But people were just expecting it's going to blow up in any second now.
Right.
So sometimes you need this communication lead, right? But those are the roles in this process. And by the way, the lead contains these people. It contains Elan is the incident commander, Rodney is the operation lead, and I'm the communication lead. That's in the document, so people can see that.
Right.
And finally, something I think there always should be is the incident review. Because an incident is a great opportunity to learn from.
And improve. Yes.
And improve.
Yes.
And if you don't do the review, you don't learn, you don't improve.
Exactly.
And then you will just end up in the same situation again. So the incident review, and I usually use the lead as the base of everything. You go through, this is what we saw, this is what we believed caused the problem, this is what we did, and these are the improvements, and this is what we did to mitigate it, and these are the improvements we now found that we believe will remove this issue forever, if we were able to find out, right?
Yeah.
And then you try to prioritize these things and get them into the backlog, but you don't have to work nights now anymore, because it's mitigated. It's no longer burning down the building, but you should probably fix this because it might happen again. Right. And another very important thing here is also an opportunity to praise people. Thanking Elan for example, doing a great job here, finding
Gratitude.
mitigation, things like that, right?
Acknowledgement.
And that's so you get something positive as well out of this thing a little bit.
Yeah.
And
It
that's
boosts the
kind
morale,
of,
I can imagine.
and that's kind of it, really.
Yeah.
You have the live incident document. You have the incident commander that is kind of the project lead, and it's very clear. And you always need the incident commander, so that is focused on getting this thing done. If the incident is too messy, you split and you introduce an operation lead. You escalate, you delegate,
You scale.
You scale, right? You scale up, and then you have the communication lead for external stakeholders, and finally, always do the review.
Right.
That's kind of it. And I found that this kind of simple thing enables, because when incident starts, it's chaotic. But these things, you just know, okay, I'm the incident commander here. I'm taking that role. Okay, let's find out what to do. That kind of thing makes us go into action, fall into action, and start working the problem. And I know I can escalate this because I feel this is too much. Okay, Rodney, help me here.
Right.
And so on, right? So, and then in the end, we do the incident review to improve.
How long do you guys give yourselves, like, if it's a situation that you know can be resolved within an hour or 24
that would be great.
hours? Like, yeah, like, how do you know? Because you said if the incident commander assumes that it's too much, like, at what point do they know that it's too much and that it needs to be passed on?
Yes.
You can feel it.
So
they can feel it.
So I was thinking I should give you a real example here, a real incident, and tell you about it, right? And to maybe illustrate that. But to give an answer on the timeline, it really depends, right? Sometimes the incident can be resolved in 3 minutes. You just kicked off the incident and you immediately fixed it, and then you do an incident review. Sometimes it goes on for months, but it probably not. If it goes on for months, it's probably not this critical thing. But you kind of have to work with it, right?
Yeah.
And those, that happens sometimes, not often, hopefully. But usually you get into this kind of semi-mitigated state where you don't have to work every night, but you still feel you can't drop this. You have to continue. It's not resolved.
Okay, so what was the biggest situation that you guys were able to resolve with this procedure? Are you allowed to talk about it?
I don't think that one I'm allowed to talk about. But it took I would say it took a month or so to resolve fully, maybe 2 months even, and it involves multiple developers. So and the reason I don't really want to talk about it was, I don't want to really talk about it.
Okay.
I can talk about another one, which we resolved which we mitigated in a few hours, and then we solved take another 1 week or 2 weeks, if that makes sense. And the reason I want to tell you about the real incident is I think it makes it more concrete. And I also want to give you the opportunity. I want to ask you questions. What do you think we did the next step, so to say? To see what do you think is a reasonable next step. And then I just tell you what we did, and I'm not saying that is right, but I'm just telling you what we did.
What we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so this incident started, like every good incident I've been involved in, kind of, is with the phrase, what's the worst that can happen to us?
Oh, wow.
That's a good start. You kind of jinxed everything when you say that phrase.
I know, like, as a person that does positive affirmations, I'm like,
So I was working at that time at Schibsted, right? And by the way, I checked with the CTO of Schibsted. I can't tell the story. So it's nothing bad with it, because things, smart people knows things happens. It does, right? It's nothing to hide. And a person, he's working with very serious thing. He works with banking, right? And the banking regulators, they expect the banks to report incidents. Right. And if you don't report incidents, the banking regulators thinks either you're lying to us or you don't know what the heck you're doing.
Exactly.
Because things happens. That's the way it is.
It's life.
Anyway, so I was working here, right? And I was kind of like in a tech lead situation, so I didn't really do any real work anymore. But I was having this small task to do, which switching tags on the cluster. And the reason we want to do this is to have better cost control of the system. We can, with the new tags, we can see what things cost in more detail. So that's a good thing. And switching tag is just adding a new name. It's really nothing. We don't change code or anything really. It's nothing.
It's metadata.
But what we need to do is we need to redeploy a new cluster, because we change what in Amazon is called a cloud formation. We change the tags in cloud formation, we create a new cluster, and we deploy it. And then when the cluster goes green through the health check, the old cluster dies, and another one takes over. And we've done it many times. Never been a problem. So this is just, what can go wrong here? And but it resolves a very critical service, because if this service goes down, these 5 terabytes of data I mentioned or whatever, they are not getting through anymore, and they just go into the void.
Right.
So it's bad if that things go down. But as I said, we switched many times. So I talked to a friend of mine called Carlos at that time. He was the senior guy there, and he said, this will just go fine, but let's just do this after lunch. Everybody's back from lunch. If something goes bad, we're all here because we have messed up before, right? So we know it's always a possibility. So what happened then, right, was I deployed my change. It worked in the developer. It worked in stage environment. No problem, as I expected. I deployed it in production. The new cluster went up. It went green, which means the health check passed. Mm-hmm. And because the health check passed on the cluster, the old cluster was destroyed. Mm-hmm. And immediately, alarms went off, showing me no traffic is going through the system. Oh, no. So here's my question now. It's a little bit, it's not a very good question, but I ask you, what do you think I do? Oh, no, okay, scream. I didn't run around and scream in the room. I didn't do that. But what do you think I did at this point?
Create an incident document.
That's a good idea, but I had this kind of, Elan, do you want to have a guess, by the way? So,
notified the incident commander.
Well, yeah. What I did, though, just to mention, it's not right or wrong here, right? But What I did here was that we learned something, and that is, if something goes bad, just start the old cluster, and to make sure the old cluster goes up, because the old cluster was working. So just start it and recover the situation. So that's what I did immediately. It just was reflex without even doing an incident. But what happened then was the old cluster started. It didn't work.
Oh, no.
The cluster that worked fine 1 minute ago no longer worked.
Yep.
That's so frustrating.
It's kind of like, it shouldn't happen, really. It's kind of the things, right? It just shouldn't happen.
It's just craziness.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So at this point, right, now I'm coming a little bit to maybe what you were alluding to, right? At this point, I realized this is an incident. It was really an incident, but now I realize this is I cannot, fix this in 5 seconds. I need help. So then I declared an incident, and we had different levels, 1, 2, 3. 1 is like the company is going down if you don't solve this now.
Ooh.
3 is, it's kind of good to do it, but we don't really have to work overtime. And 2 is kind of in the middle. We really need to make this work, but it's not going to kill the company in a few hours. So this then ends up in the middle for us at the 2. Because even though the purpose of our service is to receive data, we can live without data for a few hours. We're not going to get any medals for that. It's not going to be on my salary, and I'm not going to get a bonus for it, but it's not the end of the world, but we really need to get it going. So it's a 2. And by the way, I'm already getting notified on Slack. This is maybe 30 seconds into the instance. I'm getting notified on Slack from people saying, hey, I'm not getting here traffic. What's going on here? I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really spinning up so quickly. That is what it's really going on, right? Mm-hmm. But because I'm having this, I know what I'm supposed to do, right? I know what my steps are. I'm not panicking really,
right?
I'm just things is really heating up, right? So I then decided, okay, I'm going to declare incident, and I'm in the incident commander. I think I'm a good fit for being the incident commander because I caused the problem, kind of.
Yeah.
And I know the services and I know the stakeholders, but I don't have time. So what is the next step? What should I do if I'm thinking I'm already overloaded?
Define an operations commander.
Yeah.
Operations person.
And operational lead.
Yeah, there we go.
Then I talk to Carlos again, right?
Yep.
I nudge him on the shoulder. He's next to me. Carlos, the thing that wasn't supposed to happen, it happened. No traffic. So we have to get going. And he was like, we've been in this before. So he was kind of, he wasn't laughing, but he was like, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, oh my God. So what would you think is our goal? Me and Carl had a quick chat. So we said, what is the goal? What do we need to achieve really quickly? What do you think? That discussion, how did that went?
Restore traffic. I would think would be the primary thing that we need to do is restore traffic so that people aren't messaging us on Slack telling us they can't reach our services.
Yeah. Elan, you want to have an idea?
I feel like I'm just learning about this whole process because I don't even know what traffic is.
The traffic means that we are receiving JSON documents. From the websites, so when you log into a website and you visit the page, it sends a notification to us that Elan is reading this article.
Got it.
And when you click an ad, you never click an ad except by mistake. Nobody does.
Yeah.
But if you would click an ad, that would be another event telling us that you click an ad, right?
Oh,
so that is the traffic we put.
Okay, then that makes sense. Okay, so restoring the traffic. Okay, so observing the traffic is data for you to use.
Yes.
Okay, got it. That makes more sense.
So traffic is just a general short for network traffic. So any type of, you've heard like wire, like anything that goes over the wire would be considered traffic, right? Anything that transmits over HTTP protocols or some internet, maybe.
But Rodney had a good idea there. If I'm gonna cut in, yes, that is kind of what we agreed. Me and Carl, we said, okay, we need to get this thing going again. I don't know how, but Carlos, find any hack. It can be the ugliest thing you've ever done in your entire life. I don't care, as long as we get thing going again. And what I'm going to do in the meantime, I'm going to kick off the incident so we get some calmness, right? Because there are some steps need to be done. So I'm taking it into the command row. Carlos, you dive into the logs, do whatever you need to do. Call in everybody.
Call everybody.
Yeah.
Get them
so at Chipset, right, we had this automation happening, which was, so I filled in, I knew this, I did this before. So I had a form, I filled in the form, I gave a short description, say we are down, and so on and so forth. And then I clicked go. And what happened then is the automation chipset creates a live incident document using a special template. It creates a Slack channel for us and invites me into it. And it announces that we have a problem in the war room, which almost most people are in. And this means the live incident document is there for me to fill in. The Slack channel is there for us to sort of start communicating, and I'm inviting the other team members into it, sort of get going. Mm-hmm. And other people can now stop messaging me about the problem because they see the announcement in the war room saying,
because it's getting annoying.
Yes, it's annoying, right? When you get 10 messages in 30 seconds. So they see that in the war room, okay, they have a problem because they don't know we know about it. But now they know we know.
Exactly.
And now they get a little bit calmer. Okay, they're probably working on it. So, okay, but before that, they didn't know I was aware. Mm-hmm. So that is very important for us. But I will say that automation is not required, but it's really good to have. You can still do this without automation. I don't have it now. I use checklist instead.
Okay, so, my question is, sorry. Okay. My question is, like, do you ever feel pressured or like, dang, I messed up when kicking off an incident report? Like, is it just like, it is what it is? Hey, here we are. Or is it just like, dang it, like?
No, so that's an interesting question, right? The first time, there was a reluctance in the team to use this process. Because I think I wanted to try it because I was taught it. So I thought, let's try this thing, right? But there was a reluctance because it's kind of laying open to the world, we have a problem, i.e. we are incompetent, kind of.
Okay,
But after doing this a few times, I'm like, I don't care what people think. It, as you say, Ilan, it is what it is. But I know this process is going to help me get this stuff done. And I also know that people take me serious, because when I contact someone as incident commander, for instance, people tend to listen and react to it, because otherwise they must ignore me. So I know this process is going to help me. And I know I've been involved before. I know I'm not going to get punished for it.
That was another question. I was thinking, like, if that's a thing.
Yeah, and I'm going to mention that later, perhaps. But I think there's a drawback to this process, and it kind of only works in organizations that are high trust, and you don't get punished for admitting issues. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what I did now to continue down this road a little bit is I updated the lid with basic information, so that people that come into the channel can read the live incident document, see what we're doing, who is the incident commander, who is operation lead, what do we think the problem is. I didn't really know. But, we're working on it as soon as possible, and we're trying our best to find a mitigation. But currently, that's not much to say. This is maybe 3 minutes into the incident, 3 or 4 minutes in. So it's kind of quick still, right?
Yeah.
So at that time, then, I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, now I did this. Let's check with Carlos to see if I can help him or what's going on. And to my great surprise and happiness, Carlos and together with another guy called Alexander had found a mitigation for us. So what happened was that the service is basically a web server. So what they did, they load into a virtual machine. There are many virtual machines in the cluster, but load into a virtual machine, and they saw the web server was down. And they checked the logs, and the logs was very confusing. They didn't really understand it. So they thought, heck, just start the web server manually and see what it says on the log, and maybe we get it better when it crashes again. But when it started again, they logged in and did this manual. It just started. No problems at all. It just kicked off. But whenever it started automatically, when we added a new node, it failed. But when you logged in and did it manually, it started. But that meant we had a mitigation, because then we could just log into all these 10 machines, whatever they were, 6 or 10, I don't remember, and just start web server, and the traffic starts going through the system again. So that was amazing news, because like 5 minutes in or 6 minutes in, I don't remember exactly how long it took before us, we were kind of back in business. Right. From the outside point of view, it looked like everything is working again. Mm-hmm. But there is a problem for us that we are aware of, that the people are not aware of. But I could tell people in the channel, okay, we kind of found a mitigation here, so the traffic's back again. But there's another problem here, right? So I have 2 problems. One problem is when I look at our other services, I notice that these things are happening to other previously working services. Whenever they add a new node, a new virtual machine to the cluster, it doesn't work. The old ones works, but the new ones fail. And we don't understand why. Mm-hmm. And we use autoscaling, which means we collect user traffic, right? And user traffic goes basically in a sine wave like this. Mm-hmm. In the middle of night, very little traffic. And during the end of the night, people watching TV and reading news, it's a lot of traffic, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't want to pay for the maximum capacity all the time, so we scale down things. Right. But what's going to happen now when things scale up is all the new nodes, all the new machines that are adding, they will not work. Mm-hmm. So that means we have to hire someone to sit and start this virtual machine all the time, web server all the time. And that seems like kind of, we don't want to do that. Mm-mm. So can I declare the incident mitigated here, do you think? Or what should we do?
I would say that at this point, we've stopped the hemorrhaging, but we're still in the emergency room trying to make sure we're stable.
Shut up. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's kind of it, right? I mean, it is, from the outside, it looks like we're good, but we know it's not good at all.
Good at all.
Yeah. So we talked again. Okay, we need to find some way to make this stable.
Right.
But the logs are so confusing.
Right.
We don't understand at all what the heck is going on here. So what happened here, right, was that I don't know who came up with this idea, but we remember that we switched from Oracle JDK to OpenJDK a few weeks ago, because Oracle JDK was they had new license, which was really expensive, and we didn't want to pay that, but we still had the license because it was not going out yet. But we switched to OpenJDK, and that went fine. But we thought, I mean, it seemed to be a Java virtual machine problem, and Oracle is a different Java virtual machine problem. And I mean, let's just try switching it because we don't know what the heck is going on.
Right.
And maybe it works. And it turned out it actually did work for us.
Yeah.
When we switched to Oracle JDK, we switched from one virtual machine, one runtime, to another one, which are functionally identical, but the different developers. It worked. Or we got into stable mode. And then I could declare the incident as mitigated. Because now, with this thing here, we didn't need to stay up late. We could live with this, we think, for a while. But so the next step here, what did we always do for an incident?
Do I after
Review.
incident? Yeah,
Review, exactly right, Ilan. So what I did there as an incident commander is because we need to talk about this, because we don't understand at all what the heck is going on, right? And this, it feels like, okay, we've kind of fixed it, but this can just come back at any second, right? So I called a review, and we had it next day. And we talked, I had Carlos, I had Alexander, I had everybody involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also some other smart people in the organization that I know were good at this kind of stuff, right? And say, okay, we kind of fix it, but we don't know what the heck is going on, because this doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Because it shouldn't happen. Because the cluster that didn't work, that was working fine for maybe a couple of days or whatever, right? When we started, it didn't work again. It really shouldn't happen. So what we did during incident review, right, is I described, went through the timeline. This is what happened. These are the things we have observed, and these are the improvements we're going to make. And then we did the praise thing. Sort of thanks to Alexander or Carlos, whatever, for really quick reaction and, these kind of things, and great job by the team to find the mitigation. I don't know. But we need to continue. So this thing was just mitigated. But now, since it's mitigated, Carlos got assigned the task of, because he was the guy that was the best at Linux, because we thought it was kind of a Linux problem. Or Linux, something we didn't understand with Linux, not a problem, but something we didn't understand. So we said, Carlos, he got the job, find out what was going on. But now this is a normal team process. We are out of the exception handler. We're inside the try-catch. We are working it as normal.
Mm-hmm.
Carlos doesn't have to work overtime for this or anything else, right? He just works normal tickets. I don't work overtime. I don't sleep bad over this thing. I know it might come back, but currently it's not coming, so it's not a problem. So it's simple work, but we need to fix it because it can come back at any moment. And then Carlos, after a week or so, it was a difficult problem, found a solution. And I guess you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Because it's a mystery, right?
Yeah.
Mystery is interesting. At least I think so. Mystery is interesting.
To me.
Yeah. So it's really, he found the answer. And this is the thing, right? I watched a lot of air crash investigation show because I like the show. I think it's an interesting show. And one thing they talk about there is when you get to know an incident and you work with the incident, the air crash, right, for a long time, you become an expert on that thing. You understand the timeline, you understand the events, you have studied the facts 10 times over. You're just looking for the thing that ties everything together. Mm-hmm. And I think they call it the golden nugget. When they find that thing, it just clicks. Everything is explained. Everything ties together. And you just know, this is it. Mm-hmm. And so what Carlos found was that we thought we were using something called immutable infrastructure, which meant that whenever we added a new node, it was identical to the other nodes in the virtual machines. And the way we achieved that was that we installed our software on a virtual machine, took a snapshot of the virtual machine, mm-hmm. and whenever we create a new instance of the virtual machine, it just started from that snapshot, meaning it was identical, mm-hmm. except it wasn't. Right. Because what Amazon had, which we wasn't aware of, is they have a special startup service that checks the dependencies on the machine and sometimes upgrades it. And what this thing here was, it discovered that this OpenJDK version that we were using was an older version.
Right.
So it very nicely installed the new version. And then when it installed the new version, it removed the old version.
Oh no.
And that explained why when the web server was starting, it was starting because it was running on the old version. But then when the other was installed, it removed it halfway through. And that's why we got these really strange errors. And it crashed because now they removed it. But now it also explains why we could go into the machine and start it manually. Because when we went in there a few seconds later or a minute later and started manually, it was all there. It was installed. Everything was ready to be started again. So this thing here explained, I think, everything about this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So then we did, from this thing here, we could then identify we found, as I mentioned, an incident is a great way to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
We saw 3 things of our system that wasn't very good, that we didn't know about before, but the incident showed us that.
Mm-hmm.
It showed us that we didn't understand that there was an upgrading process going on.
Mm-hmm.
And now we had to make sure that our web server was starting after upgrade was done. This was more difficult to get done than you would think, but that's what we did. We also realized that the way we were starting web server was fragile. Why didn't we just have a loop? Start the web server. If it died, sleep 3 seconds, whatever. Start again.
Mm-hmm.
Start again. If we had that, we would never even notice this problem because it would just have worked. And third, our health check is bad because the cluster was saying, I'm good. No, it's bad. But it said it was good, and that meant because it said it was good, the working cluster was killed.
Mm-hmm.
If you fix the health check, so it was actually reporting if it's bad, it's actually bad, then we would never lose data because then the new cluster would go red. I wouldn't understand why, but I wouldn't lose the working cluster.
Right.
So those were 3 key things we identified from this incident and improved. Did this make sense, or it was just weird?
Oh, it was great. It was great.
I was catching it, some of it. A lot of words like, I think you said JDK.
Yes.
What is that?
Yes, like .NET, right?
The what?
.NET, the .NET SDK.
SDK.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
It's a Java thing.
Java, okay,
It's
that
the
makes
Java
sense.
equivalent of it, yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so my question is, we kind of touched on it a little bit before, but is there any punishment after the incident review, or is it more so like, let's not do this again, or if you do this again, is a situation, like, how does that work?
So at Chipset, there was never any punishment for this thing. I think it was even seen as, great that you're being open about what you're doing and what you're learning, and you're sharing it, right? I even shared some of our most embarrassing incidents during talks. So I shared one of the incidents we had, which was really embarrassing and caused a lot of problem. Embarrassing in that it was trivial and stupid. And I shared that, and people came up to me after saying, really great for sharing this thing. That took guts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I never felt it was took guts, because I only got positive feedback.
Right.
that's amazing.
To that, right? And I think that is maybe, so I think it might seem this process is not much, but that is the key of this process. It's not too much. It's just help you get started, working the problem, collecting the people, delegating it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with this process, as someone said to me, if I work in an organization where I get punished for being open, where there is no trust, then unfortunately, I don't think this is a great way to do it.
I like that.
Because this process kind of relies on people, management, developers, everybody trusting each other, wanting to solve the problem as soon as possible and learning from it. But if you are in an organization where there is to trust, and maybe the best thing is to sort of blame the other person. That's the best way to survive in that organization. Sad, but maybe that's rational.
So,
yeah, go on.
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? Because that concept of blame, right? I think it all boils down to something even more like AB, in that the problem is it's either you management understands that things happen or they don't. If they understand that things happen, then the health of the organization, the trust, all of those things immediately improve. But if the management style of your organization is not one where they expect things to happen, but they expect things not to happen, and they don't live in the real world where things just happen, then you're going to have that culture of blame, and it's not going to be conducive to a good process like this.
That's a really good point, Rodney. That's a really good point. I also liked, Mårten, what you said about how you shared something that felt so embarrassing, but when you actually shared it, you received positive feedback.
Yes.
So it's like, sometimes it can only be embarrassing to you. It may only be embarrassing to you, that's shame, but when you kind of like share it and give it away, it's like now you realize there was never really a problem to begin with. It was more just a working through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think the shame came from, boy, maybe you guys really should have known better, right? That is how we thought about it. But then I thought about it and I realized anyone can make this mistake. Anyone can be this, I don't know, the right term is not stupid, but anyone can make this simple mistake that causes a lot of problems. And we weren't even the first team that made that mistake. It was one of the Amazon Web Services that was so easy to shoot yourself in the foot. It was kind of obvious when you did it, but it was also really, really common. So I said, I'm going to share this in the hope that sheep that never experience this again. I'm not sure I succeeded with that, but at least I'm trying.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I have to be honest, with this stupid thing, guys. Don't do it because it causes a real headache.
Now,
you go, Rodney.
I was going to say, I think that's the sign of a mature organization, right? That is open and explaining things so that other people that live in their same technology scheme or even across technology schemes can leverage understanding, right? We have caused this problem. Yes, it's a simple problem. Yes, it's a simple fix, but it can cost the company a lot. So let's, as an organization, identify the problem. Let's put mitigations in place, and then let's find a way to make sure that this at the organization level doesn't happen anymore. I think it's a great approach.
And I mean, I'm putting a very positive light on Sheepset. I honestly think it's a great place in many ways, but of course there are also bad things about the place. So there's always good and bad things, but I think at least this thing they got right.
Yes.
Be open and don't punish people for it.
Yeah.
I like that. Is this a common practice?
Sorry?
Is this a common practice? Rodney, you're shaking your head. No.
No, probably not.
No. Probably not.
It takes encouragement, and trust is hard, right? You have to trust that the people are hired, are smart, and can fix the problem without you micromanaging them, and without you telling them they have to work their butt off or whatever, right? It's not. I don't think it's extremely rare, but it's not always there.
Oh my goodness.
What I think I love about this process and the way you've presented it is this, right? There's this concept of, hey, we have a serious problem, and we go from having a serious problem that could melt down the entire company to, okay, we have a temporary resolution to the problem so people don't have to work nights and weekends. And we have identified a set of tasks that could improve the problem, right? That now decouples we have to fix this, use the word fix this now versus we have to restore service now and fix the root problem later when we have time. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations get wrong.
And that's also the incident commander I mentioned before, right?
Right, yeah.
One of the important things for incident commander is helping developers not starting gold plating, right? And gold plating means finding the optimal solution. We should refactor this now. No, this is not the time because we don't get data. So let's just fix it. I'm not against the fix, but I just want it to start so we don't have to work nights.
Exactly.
Okay? And you just try to make people focus so you get out of the exception handler into a normal process. That's what you want to do.
Yes.
And then you can fix it.
Yes. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, to me it sounds like
sorry, can I?
Yeah.
It's okay?
Yeah.
I want to tell you a quick story about how if you have bad And low trust organization, a risk you're running is that your smaller incident might become big incidents. So the air crash not I say air crash industry, but I meant the aircraft industry was they have learned a lot from their mistakes, right? So one thing, a story I remembered was this, that there was an airline, and maybe it was a long time ago, but it was much more a hierarchical relationship. You have the captain, you had the first officer, and the captain was senior, and you don't tell the captain what to do, right? You know your place. You're going to be a captain in the future, but right now, you just do what you're told as the first officer. And, the people in the back of the plane, the tending to the passenger, they should just shut up. So it was much more a hierarchical place, right? The captain is the captain. So what happened in this airplane was they ran into some kind of issue, a smaller incident. So the captain was very focused on trying to resolve this issue together with the air traffic controller and try maybe to find a landing spot. I don't know what the heck they were doing. I don't remember exactly. But what the first officer were noticing, so it wasn't really a big deal. It was totally fine. But the first officer noticed something very important. They're running out of fuel. And that's a bad thing in an airplane to do because they're not really good gliders, these things. So the first officer, but because of this relationship they're having, the first officer had a hard time communicating this to the captain. He tried to give hints. Captain, have you checked the fuel status? Or something like that. I don't really remember. But the captain was so preoccupied. What he needed was someone to shout at him, look, we're running out of fuel. But the first officer couldn't because of how the relationship worked, how I don't use the right term, but you understand with me, how they're cooperating in the cockpit.
Right.
He couldn't get himself to do it. It sounds crazy, but he couldn't. And what they did was running out of fuel in the end. And now it went from having a small incident to a really big one that is going to cause, right? Because he couldn't communicate clearly. And if you cannot communicate, and I think this is not just the aircraft, right?
Right.
If I'm the senior developer, whatever in the team, focused on something, and I'm thinking this is it, right? I want anyone in my team to be able to say, if they see something, wait, this is not the big one. The big one is coming right here, right now. Be aware.
Right.
Please acknowledge what I'm saying.
Right.
And take a look, because I think this is the big one. I want them to do that. I want them to feel safe to do so. And maybe I can see and say, no, you have misunderstood it, right? But I don't want, one of the worst feeling ever is if we go for severity 2 to severity 1. So that's also for a management perspective, why would you want an organization with trust? Because you don't want to escalate your incident from severity 2 to severity 1. And you want to solve the incidents quicker. So it makes sense from a business perspective to do so.
Yep.
Did that story make sense to you?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that it sounds like this process, it sounds like instead of reacting, it's more of responding. And responding like in a calm, collected way.
Not instead of panicking.
Instead of panicking and just spiraling and like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's a process.
Or starting thinking, how can I protect my back?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, getting paranoid.
Well,
because
it sounds
yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, it sounds like the scaling of the process almost lends to that, Alon, right? Where where I, the person who am the incident commander, I don't have to necessarily work the incident in every single detail and update the stakeholders and update the external I just have to keep a document up to date while somebody, maybe myself, somebody else, is finding out the details of the incident depending upon the severity. They're updating all the stakeholders. All the stakeholders can look at the same information. They can go off in a room and talk about it if they want to while we're still working.
Yeah.
And the reverse is true as well. If the incident is not that bad, if it's not that complicated, I just do everything myself. So I think this incident scales from the small incidents to the big ones. So I've been in incidents where it's like, I fix it. I'm the incident commander. I update the lead. I talk to the guy. Yeah, I fix it. And then I've been in incidents where it's like 20 people in a war room meeting, and there are the chief information security officer in the room and the chief data privacy officer in the room, and you don't want the data privacy officer in the room. That's the worst, that can happen, because then it's really serious. Security
data. Yeah.
So, but I think that process works well from the smaller incidents to the big ones.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing too.
Yeah.
I love it. I think more shops should adopt a culture where something like this can be implemented, because this helps the organization help itself.
So I have, I think we might run out of time, but I have a last thing I want to mention, and I have prepared a live incident template document because I felt maybe that could help people to try this.
Right.
So now I think maybe I can take a quick sharing here.
Yeah, sure.
1 minute, and we just can scroll through this thing here. Oh no. Let's see. Share screen, it says. Share screen. Yeah, let's share screen. Yes, and share the whole screen. A lot of buttons to click here. So maybe you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
And now I click this button here, and now I think it should say, it should be Google Docs that says lead template.
It is.
Is that what you see?
Yes, that's exactly what it says.
Yes. So here, this is the template kind of that we're using. It's not the same, but it's kind of the same thing. So here, I use Google Docs because I think it's a good way to do it. Here we have the incident description where we can write down, what's going on. Here I have the severity level. It's an estimate, and it can go up and down. And maybe A is the worst and C is the least, right? And A is really bad. And this is something I noticed. Some people, they love to set A for things that are not bad at all, but they think it's bad. But it's not going to end the company. So it's not A. So, and then you have the name of the incident commander, and that's always the person that's in there. And then you have the name of the operation lead, and if it's not specified, it's the incident commander, and then you have communication lead. So we have the staff.
Yep.
And then because I'm kind of doing a little bit of project management, I kind of have the status of people. If it's just me, it's not hard. But if there's a lot of people involved, I kind of, as an incident commander, I kind of need to check in with people. How it's going with this thing we talked about for 30 minutes ago, right? So I'm trying to keep track of what people are doing. I don't want to micromanagement, but when things are going quick, you kind of have to check up with people and how's this thing going that we're looking at? Did we learn something? And then have a to-do list that anyone can add to, right? Things we want to do. And we're writing down hypotheses, right? We just type down stupid ideas, whatever it can be. And if we have things we want to do for the future, but we don't have time right now, or we shouldn't do it right now because it's not needed for mitigation, just put it here. Okay, we want to do this improvement later on. But so we're not going to do it now, but we want to do it later. And then I like to do everything in the lid. So I also have the incident review here, but this is kind of afterwards. So then describe what we're supposed to do with the incident review. And we have some suggested actions coming in, and then we accept these actions. And then I have the timeline. So that is kind of the lead. And this is,
I'm looking at this, and I honestly, I just love the organization. Even looking at this, I feel like it's a document that you can use in everyday life. Not even when it comes to, reporting incidents like in the workspace, but it's like, okay, a situation happened. I feel stressed. Who can I reach out to?
And who do I talk to about
who
what?
Do I talk to?
No, but and that seems a little bit weird, but I actually felt that this incident management process have helped me kind of on personal level as well, which maybe sounds weird, but you might have incidents on a personal level. And I think I'm quicker to respond and I work more rational with the personal ones because I think, I guess I'm the incident commander now. Okay, what do I need to do? And so on, right?
Yeah. And you can take that into your everyday life. Like, okay, something happens. It's not the end of the world. Okay, boom, boom, boom. We do this. I reach out to this person. Like, I think it's like more of like a habit, like that you're building within
yourself. It becomes a habit after you've done it a few times, right?
Yeah.
So, and I want to stress, I don't think it's not supposed to be a lot of things. It's not supposed to add a lot of ceremony to it because you don't need ceremony, but I think you need something. You need something to get into action.
Right.
And you need also to communicate with the stakeholders. And this document helps you with that, right? Because they need to know what's going on, right? So otherwise they're just gonna panicking, right?
Right.
So so this helps with that, I think. And go on.
Could something like this be found on GitHub?
Do you mean this document?
Yeah.
I suppose I could put the document on GitHub.
For
But
personal reasons.
yeah, but I don't think GitHub. I'm not sure. I think GitHub is a good tool for it, though.
Okay.
Right.
I just love the organization of it. Like,
Well, that's kind of the point, right? Is to organize the information quickly and make it consumable for all
Yes.
parties involved, right? It's a
Yeah.
living document, it's a live document that explains the incident. It then becomes an artifact of the incident so that you can always go back to it and say, what did we do? How long did these things take? Right? Like how, depending on how detailed your postmortem is, you might have SLAs that are in the minutes, right? Versus the hours, versus the days. And
Yeah.
these things matter. So it gives you one place to look for all the information and to find out who the correct points of contact are, so that you're not bugging the people that are doing the work and you're still getting the information that you require.
Yeah, and you can remove the emotion from it by actually like filling out the facts, the data.
Yeah, I love that there's a methodology to it, right? Like when something happens, because it always does, these are the steps we take. And like you said, it actually helps us in our daily lives, because now once we have these methodologies, like these moments where things happen, it's not as hectic, it's not as chaotic. Because I can just, I know how to deal with traumatic incidents, and I can deal with them in a way that doesn't cause me harm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you're not a puppet to your emotions. You're not a puppet to the situation. You're the master of it.
Yeah.
It's like what they say in June, right? Fear is the mind killer. So, but just to give you a quick example of how I used in real life, which I think is a quick story, is I was out walking here, and I noticed there was smoke coming out one of the garbage cans that was on the ground. And I suppose that's because someone put what's called barbecue stuff there, disposable, and put it in there. And I thought, well, I guess I'm the incident commander now here for this incident. So what I need to do here is I need to find someone that knows this thing better than me. But currently, I'm the only person who knows about this, and it's an incident. So I took up the phone and I called the fire department and say, hey guys, I'm watching this small fire, I think, here. What should I do? Okay, does it look really bad? It's not so bad. I'm next to the water. I can pour some water in it. Yeah, do that. And if you get, and watch it for 50 minutes. And if it gets worse, call us back. Okay, let's do that. So I did that, walked that, and poured down, and did that and observed. But I think I was thinking in these terms, right? I'm the incident commander. What should I do? I'm in charge here, not because I'm the most qualified person in the entire world, but because I know about it, right? And then I need help, so I contact these people, and they tell me what to do, and they tell me what to do next. And then what happened was that I poured some water in, and the smoke disappeared, and it looks fine now. So I went home. That's what they said me to do, right? So I felt that helped me there at that point. Maybe if I didn't do that, maybe I wouldn't have reacted, but thought, I don't know, let's skip it. I walk quickly and don't see it. I don't know. I think I just took action more naturally in a better way.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to be the one to say okay.
No. But I'm a little bit conscious about the time. I don't know exactly how much time we have. I don't want to talk, and you guys go, "Can this guy shut up sometimes?"
No! Oh no.
I just don't want to be the one to say okay.
Like we are running up on time. But,
right.
This has been a great conversation. So let it ride. But thank you, Mårten, for coming and explaining your experience and the human experience that you had, and how it has helped you professionally and in your personal life. This has been another great episode, in my opinion, of Inside.net. Mårten, thank you so much for coming and presenting to us. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.